What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Freight Podcast. I'm your co-host, Robert Bain. With me, as always,
Whitney Cowell.
what is going on, Whitney? How are things?
Things are great. Things are shaken up in the supply chain. I can tell you that much.
That they are. We're hearing a lot of rumblings and a lot of interesting rumblings. Not all good, not all bad, but a lot of rumblings.
Yes, quite a
Uh,
few.
but before we get to that, what is going on with you?
Honestly, at the moment, not too much. It's a wonderful summer. Things are kind of a slow pace. I'm not complaining. I don't have a huge conference season booked up like I did last year, so not much going on with me, and I'm not complaining about it.
That's awesome. That there is something to be said for a season of peace and not moving very much.
Yes, just onboarding in a new job and loving every minute of it.
Awesome. I love that for
Yeah.
you.
What
Uh,
about you? How's your summer going? How are you feeling walking into this new podcast, this new season?
well, summer's great so far. The kids are out of school. We're enjoying now that like the pools are open. My wife's taking my granddaughter to the pool, which is great. She likes to splash and observing the world, through the eyes of a 5 month old is it's refreshing. It's really fun. Like you're reminded of how cool certain things are. Like
Yeah.
how excited she gets around dogs and she like squeals. Like I love that. Like I get equally excited around dogs. So this is lovely. But no, like the podcast, I'm super excited about it. One, because I think we've got an interesting message. We'll have I think a very unique set of guests that we bring through, which I'm really excited for. And just honestly, I'm excited to have another platform to talk some smack because that's what I like doing, like stir the pot.
Well, then why don't we dive right into it?
Yeah, I mean, let's hit the elephant in the room. RXO bought Coyote. Big deal. Now, what's interesting about this deal is it's $1 billion deal, which it's not a small amount of money.
No.
And people are talking about that piece, but also that UPS lost almost $800 million on this deal from when they
Yeah.
purchased Coyote in 2012, I believe it was. That's
Yeah.
also not a small amount of money, especially for a business you've held on to for 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
Uh, so when I know I email or I think I texted the article to you when it dropped. What were your initial thoughts when you started looking into this?
You know, it's interesting because there's also been a little bit of leadership change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think that may have something to do with I think that may have something to do with the direction of where things are headed. But my first thought was that was incredibly random. Um,
Yeah.
just to be honest, that it's incredibly random, selling for more than what it was initially purchased for to me is never a good sign, even though like from my understanding and from what I was reading is that Coyote had increased their sales by, about 5% annually. And so I'm sitting here thinking, like, I just wish I could have been a fly on the wall in some of those conversations as to the why. I don't know that we'll get very clear answers on that, at least not right now. So I'm excited to see what happens as things unfold. And if
Did I lose you or did you lose me? Well, we had that dramatic pause because we had some technical difficulties. Apparently, Whitney and I did not top off the internet before we started the episode today. Whoops. so, so just to recap, seemed very random, purchasing for less than it was originally sold for. And you mentioned, changing leadership with UPS and Coyote has certainly led to some different decisions. I agree with
yeah,
you. I would love to be a fly on the wall in the why conversation around that.
yeah, I'm really hoping that an anonymous brave soul or six step forward with some information over the coming days and weeks so that we can learn a little bit more. I don't know that from where we're sitting, we'll get the full picture of why and what really happened up front.
No, and I think where some error was when UPS first even floated the idea of selling. They had executive level folks saying we didn't understand the logistics market which not a good look in that situation. They were kind of playing from down from there on. Um, but I also think that holds a lot of water. They walked that comment back at Freight Waves a few weeks ago, and I think that's really the jump off point of why it was even a discussion was they just couldn't really track based on how the other core businesses went how those ups and downs really kind of flow with logistics. So, but I mean, I think it's an interesting transaction. Like you said, a lot of things have happened. RXO is touting that they're going to leverage their technology with the book of business, so which is aligned with what UPS said they were going to keep the technology in house when they sold Coyote.
And I
So I
think
mean,
we'll see some aftermath, of course, with like employees. So I'm
mhm.
curious, like now is the goal going to be, well, we're building this out, we're adding more, we're opening more positions, or is it going to be a very strategic, we're downsizing because we have a new vision for the Coyote division of and what that's going to look like. So that's really the information that I was trying and couldn't, and I think that's my curiosity behind the real why of what's
Yeah,
going on.
they'll there'll be some folks that'll play this pretty close to the chest, but I would say if you fast forward 12 months, and this is a bold statement, so this will be recorded. People can do
Make
what they want with it.
it.
Coyote Logistics won't be a thing in 12 months. The brand is gone.
It has been shuffled around and
Mhm.
changed and flipped quite a few times. So I wouldn't be surprised if we might be seeing the phasing out of that organization.
Which is it's interesting to think about that because you could look back at like Trek Freight and Coyote potentially is one of these now. And some of these other, very large and original, 1.0, 1.5, logistics organizations. Uh, it's kind of trippy to think about because again, some people got their start at Coyote. Now
Yeah.
the next phase is going to be is RXO because RXO was part of the XPO family for those who don't know, and the XPO family grew via acquisition over the course of 12, 15 years, and then they started to spin different pieces of the business out. Well, now is this RXO's version of all right, we're going to build up by acquisition and get acquired, or are they going to create a whole nother acquisition platform to then grow
Yep.
something similar in size too? Because this, in theory, creates the third largest logistics provider in North America, just based on revenue numbers, which is insane.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I said, I'm thinking we'll be revisiting this topic in the coming months, as more information
yep.
is released. And like I said, I just every part of me is hoping that there's a brave solar, or like I said, or six, more information that will anonymously submit some information, because that did happen on one of the other stories that we're going to talk about. And
Mhm.
boy, did people pay attention to that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see it. And to be fair, I've got enough contacts at Coyote that maybe I'll do some sleuthing and we'll find some more information out. So, uh, you know, TBD on that. So, moving on, yeah, let's talk about some folks leaking information. Let's talk about our next story.
Would you like to introduce it?
I would love for you to, so we actually tag team on this.
All right. Well, US logistics shut down
Yeah.
overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Just absolutely shocked. I would say, hundreds of people with that decision. And
Mm-hmm.
there was it looked like a text message, which is a crazy way to find out A, that you're losing your job, B, that a company's shutting down, and C, that it is happening immediately. And so I don't know if anybody else, I'm sure a lot of people saw that, but for anybody that didn't, it basically said that effective immediately, US Logistics Solutions is shutting down. All of employment is terminated. So
Effective immediately.
yours, not your department, not the division, but
Yep.
everything right now shutting down. No routes will be run tonight. All operations should be terminated immediately, which puts all of their clients, all of their partnerships at risk. I mean, you talk about a fast way to burn a lot of bridges. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the coming days, you should receive more information regarding next steps. And to my understanding, this happened, what was it, Sunday? And still no new, was that
So,
Sunday?
so this happened last Thursday night. So we're
Last Thursday
currently,
night.
yeah, we're recording on the 26th of June. So last Thursday, the 20th, this happened, and Friday.
no new information from what I've
Uh,
seen has been progressed. I think I'm still thinking of Coyote when I'm thinking about
not
Sunday.
not to employees. The only thing that came out, this came out yesterday, was the PE partner that owned them did come out with a statement that said that their funding had been pulled. So 10 Oaks Group, which is headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina, which also disputed a lot of the information around the closing, because you had folks that worked there, including the executive team, discussing they had 2,000 employees between drivers, office personnel, and warehouse. And 10 Oaks is coming in saying it was closer to 800 or 900 people. Also disputed the amount of drivers and power units they had that was officially listed with the FMCSA. Uh, Again, also very interesting as far as how they're trying to play all that.
Didn't the FMCSA have like just over 700 that was listed?
I believe that's what the screenshot showed, is that it was 732 power units and 500 drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so very interested to see how this plays out. You mentioned before we recorded, zero compliance as far as we can see with the WARN Act, which is designed to not surprise people when these kind
Yeah.
of things happen.
And that, that's a 60-day notice, which
Mhm.
they definitely had more than 100 employees, which is like the bare minimum when you're going to do a mass layoff of like company requirements. And so to me, there's some shady stuff happening with this, lying
They're
about
mhm.
lying about your business, shutting everything down immediately, the willingness to like burn those bridges and the people that made that call and, harming their own reputation at that point. Like there is a lot of shady layers happening here.
There is, and then downplaying the impact that it had as well does not bode well. This seems very I hate saying this like this way, but very Wall Street of, we made a decision, and there's nothing wrong with being very definitive in your decision making. You should be that if you're a business leader, but being unable to communicate what actually went on. In this case, I'm reading very much that same statement that UPS made a few months back. We bought this business. It was 10 Oaks' first foray into transportation and the supply chain, and they did not understand what they were getting into. And then
When they step into that space for the first time.
correct. And what I find interesting as well is that there can be a hubris around some of these groups, because they do have significant assets behind them, and so may feel that the experts in the particular space they're getting into maybe don't know as much as they feel they do. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what this feels like, is that folks are trying to tell them how to run the business, and they were being either suppressed or shut down, in those types of leadership meetings, and they tried to strip as much value out of it as they could, and they couldn't get it. So they shut it down to basically take the write off and miss out on some taxes.
Yeah. And as somebody who's such an advocate of, you know, not seeing people as dollar signs,
Mm-hmm.
this is a situation that makes my blood boil. And I get that the larger an organization gets, the harder it is to really have, the buzzword of like company culture or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But to make those decisions that don't like shock people by the time it gets to the ground floor, there is just a correct way to have your internal comms, and B, to make external announcements. the
Mm-hmm.
the internal and external communication on this was just such a miss that it's ruined some people's lives. It has made a lot of people look like they have no idea what they're doing, which I think we've kind of discussed that many kind of didn't. And now we're probably going to see another exodus of people from the industry itself, because I feel like you can only take some people so far before they decide not to stay within the industry that has burned them so badly. And that's hard. I've watched that happen on a very small scale, just where I sit in Chattanooga, but to see that happen on such a large scale again and again and again, it's tough.
It is, and you hate to see it. You hate to see the industry not learn its lesson
Yeah.
when this kind of stuff happens to me. There's, to your point, you don't want to see people with dollar signs, and in the inverse, you don't want people to see nothing but dollar signs. You got to see the humanity in what it is we do.
Right.
I'm doing a little digging on 10 Oaks right now as we're talking, because I would like to understand their total portfolio, because as you look through it, yeah, they still list a logistics offering in their portfolio. which I find interesting. Haven't changed that yet. And weird, none of these articles mentioning them are in their press releases in on the website. Who knew?
Yeah. Usually you take care of stuff like that beforehand. Like that's what a good PR and or marketing team is generally used for, is to tidy things up before you make a really big show.
Correct. And now, as you look through comments on social media and on different news articles, you got people coming to your point about routes are stopped. There are loads that are sitting on yards and they're chained up, they're locked and being impounded. So we really don't know how this is going to play out. This is another one that is interesting to watch. They listed their assets as $100 million and their outstanding debts as over 500 million in the Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So who knows what happens with this freight, with these, they stop paying leases on the tractors. It's going to be a hard time for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
So,
and I believe it also said there was like 19 terminals that were shuttered. Am
correct.
I right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what was listed.
A huge impact on the supply chain, and depending on what they were hauling, some communities.
Because these were they did consolidation and fulfillment. So these could be e-commerce, these could be parcels, these could be people's Amazon orders that are sitting on a truck somewhere that is not moving anytime soon, which is definitely going to be tough. I know I made a post about this on LinkedIn, but there are resources for those who are impacted. So if there's anybody here that worked at US Logistics Solutions that is impacted and is looking for new employment, which I assume most are, definitely look into some of the recruitment firms that are incredible folks, like the guys at Journey, at Pinnacle Growth Advisors, at Charlie Safro and CS Recruiting. All those folks are incredible. They have great networks, and this isn't the last one of these we're going to see, unfortunately. And we may even see some big ones.
If people are looking for opportunities, you can also like just contact us directly, like reach out to the freight movement group.
Yes.
We would love to make introductions. So
absolutely,
if you're uncomfortable just cold outreach to a team, you can contact us and we would love to do that for you.
Yeah. Even if it's me or Whitney, like reach out to us, DM us, email, either one is good. We are here to help and get people back on their feet. So
any way that we can.
Absolutely. Like I said, this is not going to be the last one of these we see. We're going to see some big ones. This is the culling of capacity that has to happen with the amount that we brought in during COVID. And so this is unfortunately the cycle that we are going through right now, is the downsizing, which is painful, as a lot of people are experiencing right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people got their hopes up, when there was a little bit of a slowdown of specifically trucking companies that were closing, and thinking, okay, we're in the clear. And I think some of us who have been in the industry a little bit longer, which, for me, 8 years is not that long. It's not long enough to see every trend cycle and recycle itself.
Yep.
I'm not surprised by more places closing, sizable places, by some of the acquisitions that we're seeing. I might think that they're random, or be shocked if like some of the, names that I'm seeing pop up, but the fact that it's happening, I don't think is shocking. No. It's, to me, the callous manner in which this went down that's eye-opening.
Yeah. And with the amount of, especially PE money that came in between 2019 and 2022, again, like you'll see more just like this, because that is part of the playbook. And this is not a knock on PE firms, because they have their place and they actually can be really, really awesome as an investing partner. But again, this sudden turn of events can happen, and it hurts a lot of people. That said, let's move on to a twofold discussion about actually my former employer, Uber Freight. I had a great time at Uber Freight from 2017 to 2019. They do a lot of awesome stuff with technology, and they've recently announced a autonomous partnership with Aurora, where they're looking to fully democratize autonomous vehicles, which I have strong opinions about autonomous vehicles. We'll get to that in a second.
I do too.
I think this comes at an interesting time, because all the way back in even when Uber went public, there was talk about spinning off Uber Freight to its own entity. Right. That is now resurfaced over the last year or so, with multiple folks talking about that this could be in play. Uber Freight has changed how they do annual bonuses, and they actually give stock grants for Uber Freight stock versus Uber stock. to the Uber Freight employees. So they've been kind of prepping for this for a while, and now with Transplace fully melted in, this could be, one of the big jump off points is they're going to focus on autonomous electric and technology with the freight network they built with Transplace and their own business. Uh, let's start with just hearing the partnership is really neat. You've got strong opinions on autonomous, so do I. I'll start with you.
Mine are not super popular, and it is actually very far removed from the supply chain. To me, autonomous, we've seen how it has been helpful in some situations, but a lot of things that I have seen and how we've rolled it out has caused a little bit more chaos than necessary. And so first of all, I'm always weary when there's a new, like, either EV technology or when there's a new partnership or when there's a new launch of some sort, because again, I've just seen how it causes accidents, how if something is faulty with any of the technology, it is a huge risk. It can be a life-threatening, hazardous incident. um, and also, like, my own personal feelings, like I said, far removed from the supply chain, is that if we are doing that technology, we should be using it for people that are in need. So, like, personally, I would love to see people with, like, disabilities have access to that can, like, better care for themselves than to be lining the pockets of people that probably don't need it. Super spicy take on that, I'm aware, but
Yeah.
that's how I feel, knowing people that could actually, like, their lives could benefit and improve for local runs that they need to make to go to the doctor's office when they have seizures and they can't drive.
Yep.
I would love to see that kind of accessibility to that technology, instead of, how can we not man a vehicle that's going in dangerous terrain and hope that, millions of dollars worth of whatever that might be hauling makes it, and fingers crossed that everything works out on the launch of this.
I so my take is also spicy. It is in a different direction. Um,
Okay.
so as a nation, America is the most litigious society in the world. But that's what we do. We sue people. We get mad. Like, we also, a hot take. We either shoot guns or we sue people. That's what we do in America. That's how we respond to anger, or we type on
Sure.
the internet. The third one, we type on the internet. So when it comes to this, legislation is not prepared for what happens if fully autonomous, level 5, no driver in the vehicle. Legislation is not ready for this. And here's how you know that. That truck rolls over and kills a family of 4. Who's going to jail? Imagine the public outcry where, sorry, my robot truck killed your family. And imagine if it's a family of someone who has some type of public voice. So you killed this family of 4, and no one's going to jail. No one's in trouble. They don't pay a fine, because who do you fine? Do you fine the company that owns the truck, the company whose freight was on it, the engineer who did the algorithms in the software, the hardware that was built, the truck manufacturer? We're not ready for this.
No.
And so, now, don't get me wrong, here in America, we will have no problem just forging ahead not knowing what we're doing. We're really good at that, actually.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
actually
sure.
how we were founded. So I get it. However, this technology is being put into applications, to your point, that we're simply not ready for. Even in local applications, moving individuals. I've been in one Uber ever that was fully autonomous. I was the only human being in the vehicle. One, it's super uncomfortable. Like, it's weird.
Yeah.
And 2, something blew in front of the vehicle, slams to a stop. So the technology itself is not even ready for this. And don't get me wrong, I know that, like, Waymo and some of these other folks have done literally billions of miles of testing. And in open road applications, it might work. It might. But you still have all these variables of the human element, which we're really good at breaking stuff.
Yep.
And so we simply, as a society, are not ready for this to happen. And I love your point, though, of why are we doing this so that we can save $1,700 a load? Like, so you don't pay a driver, right? That's really what that comes down to, is that we claim to have a driver shortage, which we don't. We have a driver utilization problem, and we have a lack of really good driving jobs. So we try to replace it with robots, with a technology that is not ready for it and should be utilized, to your point, to better society versus line pockets of certain organizations.
Yeah.
So that said, good for the Uber Freight folks, because if anyone's got a network to do it, I'm interested to see this happen, because they do have a lot of closed network that this could work for. With a potential IPO with Uber Freight, that's what gets super interesting, because now you've got this still, growing technology, and the expectations of being a public company. Do things get rushed through?
Yes.
And yeah, absolutely. And Uber's already shown.
Yeah.
They've already shown they'll do that, because go back to 2018. A lot of people forget, because people have short memories. Uber's autonomous vehicle with a person driving hit somebody and killed them in Arizona.
Yep.
And we just forget about that. It's not Uber's fault per se, except for the fact that they turned off certain LiDAR. So does that happen in the autonomous vehicles with Aurora? Hope not.
I hate the phrase "time will tell," but it will.
It will. And once again, if you look at, and I know people don't like hearing this, and I'll probably say this a lot on this podcast, here in the US, we have a certain threshold for how many people may pass away before we act. Look at a busy intersection in your city that went from a stop sign to a stoplight. And if you go back and look at records, see how many people died at that intersection, that'll tell you what the threshold is for that city.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Unfortunate, but here we are. So with that, we're coming up on time here. A couple things to know. We do have holidays coming up. We've got the 4th of July. If you're a logistics provider, a trucking company, if you're anywhere involved in the supply chain, know where your freight is, because holidays are a great time to steal freight, especially holidays that fall on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because typically then one of those days around there, your businesses are closed. And so freight sits for an extra 2 to 3 days when it should already be off in your warehouse. So know where your freight is.
Yeah.
Very important. One of these days we'll have sponsors to talk about with this. This is about the section we would do that in the episode, but don't have that. So hey, go freight movement.
Off the record though, we're happy to recommend, if you don't know where your freight is, some companies that can help you with that.
Yes, we can definitely do that. Know plenty of folks that can in very highly technical ways, and some very, very simple as a text message. So upcoming schedules. Now, you mentioned already whether you don't have a very busy conference schedule. Where can folks find you, or are you going to any conferences the rest of the year?
So the one that I never miss is the Women in Supply Chain Forum, but that's late in the year in Atlanta. And then the Executive Summit with TMSA. So if you are an executive in the supply chain, A, I hope you'll be there, because it was very fun last year. We went to Chicago. B, it's a phenomenal networking opportunity. And that's where I've met with, a client before, with just some powerhouses to knowledge share. But if you do want to find me, LinkedIn is the go-to place. I've got a podcast, The Mediocre Marketer. I've officially started writing under that name as well. So I may not be there in person. I don't know, invite me, I might show up, but if not, I'd love to connect virtually.
Awesome. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Robert Bain, Strongest Man in Logistics. You can also find me on the Backspot podcast that is on different platforms, not logistics related, but hey, if you want to know about powerlifting and hear some of that, come through and you'll hear about it. As far as in person, the calendar is very crowded already this year. I'll be at the Minnesota Trucking Association's annual meeting, which Freight Movement will be hosting both podcasts and events up there. Very, very excited for that. Myself, Dave Johnson, Jenny Malfarina from Virago are all going to be there. You should. I was actually going to ask on the meeting yesterday if you were going to be there. You should talk to him about it. And if you come, you get to meet the infamous Nikki Bain. She is real. She's a real person. And my wife does exist. So I'm very excited that people get to meet her. So very rare does she come to anything ever. Like no powerlifting meets, no logistics functions. So it's pretty rare people get to meet Nick. So I'll be there, and then I'll be at Insight with the Trimble User Conference in Las Vegas. And we'll go right from there to McLeod's User Conference in Charlotte in September. So that's where you can find me in person. And there'll be plenty more of those coming here in the next few months. So, anything else to add, Whitney?
Uh, join the community, join the freight movement. Honestly, that sounds so cheesy, but we're here to shed light on stories, to share our commentary.
Mm-hmm.
And in the coming weeks, we will definitely be championing the people that are doing it right, that are making a difference in the supply chains. And if you're one of those, join us. If you want to learn more about those, join us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, this has been another Freight Podcast.
We'll see you next time.